Arthur Sinodinos' 3-year term as ambassador to the United States concludes. His replacement, former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, starts in the role this week. Our Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen sat down with Arthur Sinodinos and asked what advice he has for his successor.
My broad advice to him is bring every advantage that Australia has to the table. Like, we have a lot of information, intelligence back home, and we leverage that quite a bit here in DC, but every possible advantage to engage the Americans, and for Kevin to think big about what direction we take the relationship in. Of course, he's going to have a lot on his plate just with AUKUS being implemented, but I think Australians should not underestimate how influential we are or can be in this town. I'm always astounded at how much support there is for Australia in a bipartisan way here. When I first got here, a lot of people on both sides of politics telling me they admired the way we'd stood up on issues like economic and trade coercion. So there's a lot of support for doing things with Australia, and I think you'll see that in the reaction of the Congress as we take AUKUS through the next few steps.
On a personal note, you've been here 3 years. You had a bit of time before the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
and then
that's 6 weeks.
Oh God, with a young family, and it would have been really tough.
Well, look, everybody was in the same boat, but you're right. In terms of what we do as diplomats, certainly the sort of people-to-people side was much more muted, as you can imagine.
Probably literally and Zoom.
Yep, a lot of Zooming going on. A lot of departments had closed down. In that first year I was here, the Trump administration, you could still sort of get into the White House, and the rules about who was wearing masks and who wasn't wearing masks were, pretty fluid in those days. But yeah, it was a challenge. Ended up spending quite a bit of time in the residence. I've got a home office down the corridor here. If there was a silver lining to this, probably spent more time with the kids than I had in a long time. So yeah, I've really been, I think, energised by my time here. And as I leave, it's not a cliche, but I'm actually more optimistic about the place than when I arrived. I think it's very vibrant place, dynamic place. It is changing very quickly, and also it's not predictable. For example, the last midterm elections, those results were not quite what people expected, and it just showed that never just extrapolate from current trends. This place always has a capacity to surprise. So when people worry about what's going to happen to American democracy, I'm actually more optimistic about that than a lot of people. It's a very noisy democracy, very transparent, but I think in the end the institutions here are very resilient, and so I'm optimistic about that, and I think that's important because America that is resilient, engaged in the world, is very important for the world. Bad things happen when America is not engaged in the world.
What are you most proud of?
Look, this is more a background thing, but I think we've melded a pretty good team at the embassy. I've always prided myself on, if you are open and share information with people, you'll get the best out of them. And I've been accessible, I've been prepared to work across the whole range of embassy functions and give time to whether it's Austrade, whether it's the Home Affairs people, the political branch, the trade branch, and I think the cultural branch, public diplomacy. I think it's important in this role that you're custodian of the overall relationship on a day-to-day basis between Australia and America. In this job, I'm an honest broker. I'm not running a personal agenda, whatever my politics are. I'm doing a job on behalf of the country, and I'm obviously accountable to the government of the day, and I'm very comfortable with that because I found in this job in Australia there's such a strong bipartisan support for the relationship, and it's the same over here. So in that sense, it's very easy to be the Australian ambassador to the US. There's a lot to work with.